Yes, apparently I was about 5 years old when I told Mum I was going to be a nurse, which was quite unlikely in our family because all my family had been teachers. But apparently I used to start bandaging up with dolls, and I always had to have stories about people who'd been knocked down or ill or wanted to be made better, and all this sort of thing. So I was absolutely certain I wanted to be a nurse right from that young age, and I never changed. So I had a nurse's kit with a stethoscope and all the paraphernalia. I was walking home from a young people's meeting one night with a pal. Mm-hmm. And I can take you to the spot now on South Norwood Hill where she suddenly said to me out of the blue, "Marjorie, have you ever thought about being a missionary?" And I stopped dead in my tracks and stamped my foot and said, "Me a missionary? Never, never, never."
Well, I know.
And she very wisely shut up. Mm-hmm. But, it was just amazing, because after that, whenever I was alone with the Lord, the words kept coming back to me, "Yes, I do want you to be a missionary." The thing was that when you're called, the Lord does test your call.
Oh,
and
that's true,
I think
really.
my first real test came when I'd been up to the Middlesex Hospital for my first interviews. Mm-hmm. For general nursing, that was. Yes. And I'd been right through with matron and everybody else, and I just came to the medical. And I was called back after my medical, and the doctor said, "Well, we're very sorry, but we're not accepting you.
Oh dear.
You're half an inch too short." Their limit was 5'2", and I was 5'1.5".
Yes.
And then he said to me, "I don't think you're strong enough to be a nurse." So you can imagine, I was 17 years old, and I just came out of that hospital that day thinking all the world's crashed around my ears. I thought, "Well, Lord, you were calling me to be a missionary, and I can't even get through a medical. What are you doing?" But in that, when the doctor was talking to me, he slipped in a word. He said, "But I think you could do children's nursing." Well, I trained, first was at Great Ormond Street. I did children's nursing first. Then I went on and did my general at King's College. Then I went to the Salvation Army Mothers Hospital in the East End of London and did my midwifery. Mm-hmm. And that was followed by 6 months at doing a postgraduate theatre course. So I did a colonial course, first of all, in French. You had to pass an exam in French first, then you did the colonial course. Then because I was a medic, I went down to Antwerp and I did their diploma in tropical medicine and hygiene. Mm-hmm. That was the toughest thing I ever did, because it was 15 subjects, all in French. In Belgium, you have to give it back to the professors in the exams just as you were taught it. Compare it to the medical work in this country, it's so totally different. I mean, we didn't even have an X-ray department. Just diagnosed them clinically. We couldn't do it any other way,
Amazing, yes.
Yeah, yes, and of course it was very, very primitive. We had two wards, and at night, everyone who comes in Congo who's ill, they always bring their relatives with them. They always have 2 helpers with them. Yes. So they come with all their stuff. Mm-hmm. So at night it was amazing, because you had the ward full of patients, because we were always full. Mm. We had the sick children in between the 2 beds of the adults, right, with their helpers sleeping on the floor beside them, and the other helpers from the other beds sleeping underneath their beds. And all their stuff they used to bring in at night, their lamps and their trunks and their pots and their pans. And then
so
you see at 2 o'clock in the morning you'd have an emergency and need a bed, and you'd sort of clamber over all these bodies and say, "Come on, out of your bed, we need it, put you underneath." And I mean, when you think of it, compared with Great Ormond Street and King's College, it was a bit of a shock. I used to bring in cases who'd been in labour for 3 or 4 days. Mm. I mean, I think I saw every emergency in midwifery that you could possibly see. And, we had to do Caesars quite a bit as well. Mm-hmm. So we had an operating theatre. Yes. We boiled up most of it. And we did have sterilisers, which were heated by 3 paraffin lamps, tilly lamps under them. But, I mean, it didn't work for long, because you couldn't get the oil, the petrol. So we didn't use them. No. I should say 16 years out of the 18 years I was there, they weren't in use, and we used to boil up the instruments on a casserole over a primer stove. Mm. And yet we had very little infection.
Amazing.
I think my worst experience was when I went on holiday up in Lukalala. Mm-hmm. And they had a dispensary there with a nurse, but no doctor. Right. And the nurse said to me, she said, "Marge, I want to go out on a conference with these African women. She said, would you mind standing in for me for one night?" I said, no, of course not. I didn't know what that night was going to bring, did I? A 16-year-old
What did it bring?
brought in at 2 o'clock in the morning. She'd been in labour for 5 days. I examined her and I thought, oh Lord, please. I mean, if Bolobo, she'd have been straight down to the theatre. There I was in the middle of the bush with no theatre, no doctor, and a hurricane lamp and no other nurse and nothing, no other...
So whatever happened?
So I think, well, the amazing thing was that, I mean, the Lord was very gracious. I didn't think for a minute I'd get a live baby.
No?
But in the end, I got a live mother and a live baby.
Oh.
We knew the Simba revolution was happening, but, you know, in our little pocket in the middle of the forest, you know, we didn't sort of know much about it. We thought it was all happening up a river.
Yes.
And it was amazing. I can remember it very clearly. It was a Saturday morning, and you know, I'd taken staff prayers that morning, and I'd read Psalm 46. Had no idea how relevant it would be. You know, God is our refuge and strength,
Yes.
a very present help in trouble. Well, our houseboy was on holiday at the time, so I'd gone up from hospital. And I was in the kitchen cooking, you know, preparing for the weekend food, and the houseboy suddenly arrived at the door. I wondered whatever he was doing, because he was on holiday and he was in a terrible state. Oh, he said, Mama, Mama, Mama Moncasa, that was my African name. And we said, the Simbas are coming. He said, they've gone to Lukalela, that was our next mission station further up.
Yes.
They've killed all the white people there and they're on their way here. And he was in such a terrible state.
Right.
I said to him, well, you just go down to Matei Maloli. He was the senior minister. Missionary. I said, you tell him what you've told me. And I took no notice of it whatsoever. I just went on cooking. I thought always, you know, got excited about nothing. An hour later, Angus appears at my door in the kitchen and he said, Marjorie, he said, it's true. And he said, for the sake of the African people here, the Christians, we must get out. Otherwise they'll be killed protecting us. So he said, I've been in touch with the Roman Catholic mission, who were at Bolobo,
Yes.
and they've got a boat that's big enough to take us and them. So he said, 3:30, be on the beach, don't tell anybody, 1 case, small case, and food in a bag, and that's it. Well, would you believe it? I said to myself, well, I had a colleague with me in the house, so we're going to have a good dinner. So I cooked a good dinner, and I just said to her, now we've got 2 hours, I said 3 hours to pack the house up, pack a case and put everything away and get sorted out and get our food ready. No sooner were the words out of my mouth, but a nurse comes rushing up from hospital, Mama, 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 please come quickly, they're bringing in all the injured soldiers that have been in the war with the Simbas. So the 3 of us, Joan and the doctor and I, were in the theatre until 3 o'clock, patching up all these people. So we had literally half an hour to get ready, but you know, it's amazing what you do in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got away about 4 o'clock. We were sitting on upturned suitcases, and we had quite a few babies with us and young children as well. So we were travelling from 4 o'clock that morning right through the night, right through the following day until 7 o'clock in the evening.
Good gracious. Yeah. So then the Lord called you back here to be a minister's wife after all.
Yes, wasn't it strange, talking about full circle?
So you've had the best of both worlds.
Yes, I have actually. I had 2 wonderful lives.
Yeah.
Very different, totally different.
Oh yes, yes.
But both equally fulfilling. This being Easter Sunday, we would ask Mrs. Brown to come forward and lay an egg on the altar. On Sunday, a special collection will be taken to defray the expenses of the new carpet. All wishing to do something on the carpet.
All wishing to do something